And I'm going to hit broadcast in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Expanding Professional Development and Marketing for WIOA Success. I'm going to stop my screen here. Just 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to move forward to the next slide. I wanted to let you all know that we will be issuing a certificate for CEU verification, and that will come to you within 24 hours from Zoom, which is the online platform that we use. So you can look for that. Within 24 hours, you'll receive a certificate noting that you've attended this webinar. As well, we have the Adult Educator Resource Repository, which is beautifully funded by Essential Education. I want to encourage you all to upload or download resources. As well, there will be resources from this webinar and previous webinars on the Adult Educators Repository. And there are thousands of users on that repository sharing best practices, and you're able to access those as well. There's lots of leadership opportunities coming up. We have the Vice President for Membership, the Region 2, Region 4, and Region 6 representative. The leadership election process will open up very shortly, so keep an eye on your inbox for more details on that. As well, we have some wonderful recognition opportunities that are coming up. COAB issues national awards, the Teacher of the Year, Administrator of the Year, Adult Learner of the Year, all for $10,000 each. So if you know an outstanding teacher, administrator, adult learner, we encourage you to go to our website and nominate them. We also have a State Innovator, Workplace of the Year, and Advocate of the Year, all of which are $2,000 awards each. So please go to the COAB website, nominate those folks, those that you feel would fit the bill for that. Okay, next, Educate and Elevate. So Educate and Elevate is our national public awareness campaign. As you may be aware, we started this a little over a year ago. We've had more than 83,000 legislative contacts since then. And we started this because back at that time, back on April 1st, 2017, it looked like there's a potential for a 16% funding cut to the tune of $87 million for workforce innovation and opportunity. And so we really worked hard to not only stave off those cuts, but we also were able to gather $35 million more in funding for the field, and there's an additional $25 million of funding. So it looks like we're looking at $60 million total additional funding on top of what we were able to work together with all of you to stave off those cuts. So I want to encourage you to take action. Go to educateandelevate.org. Really super easy. It's just 3 quick clicks. You can contact your legislator today and let them know that adult ed is important. So we have here the slide here that talks about how we can make a difference and how we were able to stave off those funding cuts. Next, I'd like to remind you that the national conference is coming up. You can join us in New Orleans, Louisiana on March 31st to April 3rd. We want to encourage you to mark your calendars, but also mini grants are coming up. So we have 50 mini grants valued at $350 each, and all members can apply. So you're a member of COAB, if you're on this webinar, you are welcome to apply. So keep an eye on your inbox for that as well. We partner with 35 national organizations. We provide intensive professional development on a number of different strands, which you can see there. We are really, really excited because this conference is continuing to grow. We're expecting over 2,000 attendees at this next conference coming up in 2019 in New Orleans, Louisiana. As well, I'd like to point your attention to our COAB Journal. The COAB Journal, our aim is to serve the needs of you, the practitioner. So we made a recent change to the journal, and it's solely published by COAB. We have had over 11,000 downloads to the journal, so it's definitely being viewed by our members and serving as a resource. You can go to coab.org. It's there for free for you to download, or you can also purchase a hard copy. So now I'd like to stop here, and I'd like to turn this over to our wonderful sponsor, so Dan Griffin. He is here with us today from Essential Education. Dan, I'd like to turn this over to you.
There we go. Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. and welcome to everybody. We certainly appreciate the opportunity we have to work with the folks at COABE to bring a whole bunch of different things to the field, including the resources page that Sharon mentioned earlier, and webinars such as this one. So let me share my screen, and I should be able to do that. All right, wake up. There it goes. So a few things that we want to talk about just briefly at the beginning of this webinar is regarding adult basic education learning materials. We've heard from teachers across the board over the last year that there are several things that are really important to them as the tests have changed and the new standards have come into place. First is that teachers need guidance on how the NRS tests have changed and how to increase the complexity level of the content that they're teaching. And so we created our Table 11-12 curriculum guide. This is a free resource that provides a great outline for making that change from Table 9-10 to Table 11-12. We'll be providing CASAS guidance once the math test is approved, and we can put that all together in one package for you. Teachers have asked us for effective diagnostic tools that are closely aligned to the CCR standards, to TABE, CASAS, the NRS tests. And so our Table 11-12 Academy and CASAS Academies provide exceptional practice tests and skill mastery reporting for this. Both of those tools are adaptive learning tools that individualize the learning plans for each student, and we're really excited about the launch of new content into both of those to take that down to the second grade level. So we're really excited about the tools that we've created to help you create a curriculum that will help students move forward. And then most exciting to us, we're about to launch a brand new product. You're the first people to really hear about this, our new TABE Essentials print series that includes an innovative virtual tutor. So this is a print series of workbooks that will seamlessly create blended learning in your classroom. It includes instruction, quizzes, practice tests, and a learning management system for teachers. So just briefly to touch on each of those, our Table 11-12 guide is about a 100-page document. You can download it. It's completely free, something that you can use with teachers or yourself in training. Provides great side-by-side comparisons from 9-10 to 11-12, and also unpacks each of the tests so that you can really see which standards are critical, what are high emphasis, medium emphasis, low emphasis topics, and then gives advice on how to create deeper complexity levels through the activities that you're doing in your classroom. Again, that's a completely free guide that we created to support the field. Our Table 11-12 and CASAS Academies, as I said, those are both adaptive learning programs. The engine is aligned to each of those tests specifically, as well as the CCR standards. It individualizes the learning plans for students. And then just in a couple of clicks, you can get reports like our skill mastery report here that will show you exactly which standards, which skills students need to work on in order to progress. Of course, the system is feeding them lessons along that way, but it provides you, the teacher, with great support for addressing student needs and interventions. And then our new TABE Essentials series with Virtual Tutor we'll have the sampler of this, which you see the cover of here, available in about 2 weeks. These are print workbooks, 21 books in all, that are sold in 10 packs. The workbooks cover all the Table 11-12 objectives. They include a virtual tutor. So as you can see in our little graphic down here, students will work in the workbook. The workbook has QR codes that they can scan from any mobile device, and it will bring up lessons directly in their hand that align with the content in the book. What really makes it unique is that it also includes quizzes and practice tests that are tied to a learning management system. So you as a teacher can go in and see what your students have done, where they're scoring well, where they need help, and provide them with the readiness, tools and extra support that they need to be successful. This is an example of a couple of lesson pages, so you can see that the lessons connect to student lives. They're very clean, open pages. They address the most appropriate learning styles, and then the student simply scans the code from their mobile device and brings up the content that they need. It's really, I think, a great innovation in blended learning, because not only does it tie to technology, but it gives you the back-end system to go in and see exactly what students need help on, give them quizzes, lets them take TABE 11, 12 practice tests, just a really robust offering to help students and to help teachers handle the new changes in the curriculum. One other thing is that we really spent a lot of time creating correlations in the front of these books. So in the table of contents in each book, you're going to see that every lesson is provided with what the TABE objectives and CCR alignments are and what the objective to that lesson is. I think teachers really want to know that what they're teaching is actually meeting the standards of the new test. And we provided that guidance directly into the workbooks to make it easy for you. And so that's just examples of what you see printed there. But you can rest assured that everything is covered, and you'll be able to see the objectives and know how to use them in your classroom, and then also extend learning based on those objectives. The program, as I said, is 21 books. It will cover all levels, EM, D, and A. It's only $52.50 for a 10-pack of the title. That includes the 10 accounts for the virtual tutor, access to the learning management system, dozens of quizzes and practice tests, and the TABE level practice tests. If you're in a setting where your students can't get online and you just want to use the workbooks without any of the blended support, that's $40 for a 10-pack of each title. But that doesn't include, of course, the virtual tutor or access to the management system. So we are excited to partner with you and bring some things that can address the adult basic education field in this time of change. If you would like more information on this, just email me, dan@essentialed.com. And if you'll just, I just need name, phone number, email, and whether you're a TABE or a CASAS user, so that we can get you to the right sales representative to get in touch with you. Make sure you have a copy of the new sampler when it comes out, and set up any demos for the materials. So with that, Sharon, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate that. And I just want to mention Essential Education has been just a fantastic sponsor of COABE. They're actually sponsoring the next edition of our COABE journal that will be coming out, which will focus on prison literacy. As well, they're going to sponsor an all-new program administrator training that is just going to revolutionize the field. So I just want to say thank you, Dan, on behalf of COABE for that sponsorship. We greatly appreciate it.
You bet.
Yes, and for sponsoring this webinar, because thanks to their sponsorship, this webinar is completely free to you, our members. So now I'm going to take a moment here to introduce to you our expert presenter, Randy Whitfield. Randy's here with us today as a retired State Director of Adult Education for the North Carolina Community College System. This was a position she held for 21 years. She has an educational doctorate from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and she has held the following positions: community college instructor and coordinator, university professor, educational consultant for Levi Strauss & Company, National Workplace Literacy Program, and a coordinator and director of Basic Skills Program. She has co-authored 2 books called Workplace Job Specific Skills Program, the How to Do It Manual, and Adult Basic Skills Instructor Training Manual. Currently, Dr. Whitfield is an educational consultant working with local and state adult education programs, writing grants, providing trainings for local and state staff, and evaluating local programs. She is also the past chairperson for the National Adult Educational Professional Development Consortia and the National Council of State Directors of Adult Education. She has served on numerous national committees, including the Workforce Excellence Board, the National Reporting System Committee, and the National Leadership Council for Madison Heights Lifelines. So without further ado, I'd like for you all to welcome Randy Whitfield. And if you could just put there in the chat box your name and where you're from, we can give her a warm and hearty welcome. So welcome, Randy. I'm going to turn this over to you. Randy?
Yes.
Okay, so if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, perfect.
Okay. There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here today to talk to you about WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014. We've had it since 2014, and now we're in the midst of trying to expand our professional development for WIOA. And also, I think a very important point is to market for WIOA success. I think when new legislation comes out in the United States for adult education, we often just think that students, teachers, administrators, co-workers will know what is involved and will accept the new legislation. However, I've always found that it always is good to market the program to all of those involved. And we'll go to the next slide. Once again, hopefully you know, because WIOA has been around since 2014 and was discussed for many years prior to that, that there are actually three main purposes for this act: to increase access and opportunity for students for employment, education, and training, and of course to give them all of the support services they need. Another purpose is to encourage alignment and coordination among the federal partners. There are many different organizations and state entities that deal with adults and try to help them in their workforce development, education, and vocational rehabilitation activities. And in the past, they were somewhat connected, but a major purpose of WIOA is to ensure and to strengthen the alignment and coordination among all of the programs. And then, of course, the third one, which most of you should be well aware of, is the increased accountability and results for the core programs. And I just want to take a step back in time because I think it's important to understand that actually adult education had its roots in economic opportunity. And I know that many people today think, well, WIOA is getting adult education into employment, other training that we haven't been a part of before. But actually, in 1964, Congress passed the Economic Opportunity Act and really wanted adults in the United States to have the best opportunities they can, to have a good life and to have good pay. But in 1966, they realized that one thing missing in the act was adult education, and therefore they passed the Adult Education Act. Now, it's important to understand that the major emphasis of the Adult Education Act was helping adults improve their basic reading, writing, and math skills so that they could be functionally literate and could have meaningful employment in our society. The interesting part about that, and I know my bio was long, I was not around in 1966 when the Adult Education Act was passed. However, when I started in adult education, I do know that we could not use our federal adult education money to sponsor students who were functioning on the high school level or above. But all that changed, and that was expanded, and the U.S. Department of Education did allow states to eventually allow people with high school completion levels to attend our programs. The Adult Education Act stayed basically the same from 1966 to 1991, when the National Literacy Act was passed. And that's when you have the insurgence of workplace literacy and resource centers. All states at that time were asked to set program goals for local programs. And I know I was the state director in North Carolina at the time. And when our state set goals, the locals wanted to know where these goals came from, who set them, and what had typically happened in states is that a group of local providers would be called to the state office to try to help the state in setting these goals. Now, the goals that we set back then, there were no requirements. They were just goals. So they really had no teeth as far as getting local programs to try to meet the outcome measures. But I've always found that adult educators really step up to the plate. And I know in our state, many of them, even though there weren't any incentives or any disincentives for not meeting those goals, tried very, very hard to reach those goals, and they did. I was very involved in the 1980s in workplace education at a local level, and that became big in, as I said, the 1980s. So the things we're hearing now in WIOA aren't really new. They've just been around for years, but maybe the emphasis has been different. Then we come to the Workforce Investment Act of 1998. And if you actually read the Workforce Investment Act, or WIA as we call it, you would understand that it is very similar to WIOA. A lot of the same purposes, the same outcome measures are there. The only difference, in my opinion, is that WIA was the legislation that said, here is what you should do to help your adult learners. Whereas WIOA, in many cases, says, here is what you must do in order to help adult educators. So then we have the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, as I said, 2014. And by the way, WIA was supposed to be reauthorized 5 years after it was instated in 1998, but it took over 16 years for that to occur. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of all of the details, for instance, for the performance outcome measures, because you should know those by now. I just want to mention what they are and a little bit of a difference between those that we have in WIOA and those in the past. What I want to emphasize is what we need to do to A, implement WIOA, and B, to provide professional development opportunities that will help WIOA. So you have your basic performance outcome measures of gaining educational functioning levels, attaining high school diploma or its equivalent. But the extra added thing about the high school diploma or equivalent is that then students are expected to go on and either attend post-secondary education and training or get a job. And so you have enrollment in post-secondary, and that doesn't necessarily mean a 4-year degree. It was very interesting when I started teaching adult education to me that most of my students did not even believe that they could get the high school diploma. All they came to my classes for was to improve their basic reading, and hopefully some of them could go on. But we've been able, I think, over the years to show our adult ed students that actually the high school diploma or its equivalent is attainable by them. And then, of course, the employment. And the employment get a job, keep a job, came into being during WIOA, but now there are things you have to look at about median earnings as well. Dee Hock, who is the founder, was the founder of Visa, said the problem is never how to get new innovative thoughts into your mind, but how to get old ones out. And I personally have found that true between the differences of WIA and WIOA, because I know perfectly well all of the outcome measures, the performance outcome measures for WIA. And I think most adult educators today know that too. However, the changes with WIOA have been problematic. And therefore, I think that we need to make sure that everyone, from the student to the teacher to the administrators to all of our partners and co-workers, need to know what the new law is and how we can meet that law instead of staying focused on the old one. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be stopping and mentioning as we go through these slides are the challenges and successes, because I think that in order to provide professional development for WIOA and to actually institute or implement WIOA at the local level, you have to think about what the challenges are. And I think from what I've heard from people and from the conference sessions that we've had, many of the challenges revolve around resistance to change. And many of the challenges also come as a result of lack of understanding as to what the law means, what it is actually trying to accomplish. And I think what helps in that respect is to see the successes in it. And there have been many successes related to post-secondary education and training. And what you need to do is to meet with your local partners, meet with occupational staff at your program, and understand what is in store for our students. Most of our students, as I said, when they came to me, they did not even think they could get a high school diploma. So to help them understand that they can go beyond that is really difficult. And what you need to do is to get the information down to their level. I've had several workshops in the past where I did role plays, which I think are very successful in professional development. And one of the things I did is I dressed up like Uncle Sam. I picked 5 local programs and put their outcome measures, anonymously of course, on a big chart paper. And I gave participants in the audience play money. And I said, look at these programs. If you were a student, which program would you want to attend? And what they did is went up and put their money on the programs where they would attend. And it was interesting, except for one very low performing program that did get some play money because a participant felt sorry for them. Most of them wanted to go to a program where they could actually be successful and actually achieve their outcome measures. So again, I think, and we'll talk about this later, that it has a lot to do with how you market your program. Many years ago, businessman in North Carolina said something that I didn't really agree with at the time. He said, if you think you're finished when you graduate high school, you're right. You're finished. Because at that point in time, our main goal was helping students complete their high school equivalency. It's not that we didn't care if they went on to post-secondary education or training or not. We did care. We encouraged them. We talked to them about it. Many local programs took students to view post-secondary opportunities, had speakers come in, but didn't really push the point that in today's society, you need more than a high school diploma in order to become really economically independent. So Bob Mackey was a visionary, and today you can still see that people with some college do have a lower unemployment rate than students who just have a high school diploma, and obviously a lower unemployment rate than students who do not have a high school diploma at all. One of the biggest components of actually WIA and WIOA was integrated education and training. And I find that as a professional developer, as someone who tries to help people at the local level understand IET, it's a very difficult concept, because what we've been used to doing is we provide adult education. Occupational programs provide post-secondary education and training. And then we hope that students attend both. But IET is attending both at the same time, concurrently. And it is also using contextualized materials. In other words, it's not just having your adult education textbooks, which, by the way, thanks to publishers, are becoming more and more contextualized, but not just taking those and using those with students, but actually looking at the skills that are used in various occupations and teaching those while teaching our basic skills of reading, writing, and math. And also targeting training in occupations that assist adults. Once again, many people would say that IET is new. It is not. There are instances where many states were using forms of it prior to even WIA. For example, Washington State had its own IBEST program, which combined occupational training and adult education. And many people throughout the United States have visited that program to see it in action. And Bill and Melinda Gates, being in Washington State, saw the program, liked how it combined the two, and actually started a program for adult education, a grant program which some states received called Accelerating Opportunity. And that was to teach students in the context and concurrently with occupational training. And the results show that students learn more that way, were interested more, stayed in classes more, and they saw adult education as not just something isolated, but something that would help them in their real life. As I indicated to you before, workplace education was prevalent throughout the United States in the 1980s. And in the early 90s, the U.S. Department of Education even funded some programs, some special grant programs for adult education in the workplace. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of one of those. Levi Strauss and Company actually got one of those first grants, and I was in that program, in their National Workplace Literacy Program. And so we were able to take that funding, and we actually worked with a testing company to develop customized curriculum for Levi Strauss & Company. And it wasn't just our books and our educational processes. It was using company forms, taking medical forms, taking forms for figuring out production, and using those to teach students reading, writing, and math. And at Levi Strauss & Company, we even had an instructor who was very inventive and did a quick guide for students in figuring out their rate of production. And what happened is the students taught the instructor how the rate of production can be obtained, and then all of them together put together a little guide that students could carry around. It impressed the company so much that Levi Strauss then decided to expand the workplace education program after the grant ended. We went for 3 years, and they were funding at over $1 million a year. And I say that to say that if you can show to any business or industry that what you are teaching people in your adult education classes helps them improve their skills in the workplace, then you have their total support. And we did have a lot of support with workplace education in the past. We had things which I think are still very good today. For instance, many businesses gave work release time. I happened at the time to be working in a company, in a local community in North Carolina. And if you know anything about North Carolina, that we are into furniture building. And Thomasville Furniture Industries was in our service area, and therefore we went into every single plant and started adult education classes. The difference now, if you'll look at what I have on the screen, is that workplace education means more than just taking your program to the students where they are. It means helping them gain the basic skills, the academic critical thinking, digital literacy, and self-management skills they need on the job, and how to use resources and information, not only so that they can be proficient in their jobs, but also in successful transition. And it's really an eye-opener sometimes to people in business and industry how some of their employees don't understand or don't have the basic skills they need. I also did some consulting work for a steel company in Tennessee. And as I walked around the plant with the plant manager, we realized that many of the employees had not filled out the forms that they were supposed to do on an hourly basis. And after we assessed the students for their skills, we realized that many of them just didn't have the basic literacy skills to fill out those forms. So that's something that's very important. So when you talk about WIOA, integrated education, training, and workplace, you're actually talking about training local programs, how to contextualize lesson plans, how to work with occupational instructors and other people in workforce development, as well as how to embed career exploration during lessons. Cheryl Keenan, who is the Director of OCED and Adult Ed at the U.S. Department of Education, says the time that you need to start talking to students about career exploration is from the minute they enter your adult education class, not when they are just ready to graduate from it. And then she says also, and I agree, that you need to start with the students no matter what level they are on. And therefore, it helps to talk to students about careers and get them thinking about it. And one of the things I've realized since writing grants has been the local employment and workforce trends. It's not just important to get students jobs. You have to get them jobs where they plan to be. And therefore, you need to be aware of what jobs pay in your area, how many are available, and the best way to do that is to work with your workforce development boards. But that gets students into careers at an early stage in their adult education program. Now, once again, challenges and successes. Everything I've heard from local programs and everything I've tried to do as an adult educator shows me that challenges is that all of this takes time, it takes money, and it takes collaboration. And as someone once said many years ago, you have to collaborate in this day and time or evaporate. So therefore, although it does take time and effort, which we often feel we don't have to work with others, we do need to step out beyond adult education and work with our federal partners and see what we can do, and work with occupational programs to see what is available for our students. Once again, the Gates Foundation and iBest have had a lot of success. You can look their successes up along with those on Accelerating Opportunity. I will also be talking about in a few minutes successes that I've seen firsthand through a grant that I've become involved with called Youth Build. And the collaboration with workforce partners is very important. And WIOA was created to give more flexibility to states and local areas to work across the system so that you do have a stronger alignment of the workforce education and economic development systems. But once again, that takes a lot of time and effort. So, what needs to be involved in collaborating? Obviously, the leveraging of resources. And you can meet, as many of you do, with your partners to determine what resources they have and what resources you have, and how you can support students in going on to post-secondary education and training and furthering their education. And how to work with CTE or occupation for contextualized instruction. With the Youth Build program that I am involved with, it was very interesting that the person who was the best at contextualizing instruction was actually the construction instructor. And therefore, it's important when you're providing professional development to emphasize that there has to be meetings of the two groups so that they can tell what is best for students. And to not just look at reading and writing and math in isolation, but how it fits in to various professions. I already mentioned the local employment trends and the local employers and their job needs. Are they in need of employees? If so, what kind? What are the trends? So if construction is a growing trend now, and it has been, does it look as if it's going to continue in the future? And that information can be obtained from your Workforce Development Board, your state Workforce Development Board, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics has a lot of information on careers and career exploration. So there are other initiatives that people have started, and that is, what about students who go on to post-secondary education and training, and they still need adult education instruction? And some programs are continuing to provide that. Now, I know that there are restrictions in some states on working with students who already have a high school diploma or its equivalent, but in other states, there can be some collaboration in these areas. The term career navigator is something that is being used a lot and has been since the beginning of WIOA. And it's very good to have them in adult education program space so that they can help students throughout their adult education program, and certainly as they want to move to other programs after they complete it. And of course, co-location in the one-stop centers. So we get back again to the things you need to sit down and consider when you're thinking about how to provide professional development, or how to actually institute or implement WIOA at the local level. And it's a good thing to sit down with your constituents, with your teachers, with your students, with other federal partners, with occupational instructors, and discuss these. What are the challenges that we're going to face? And once again, I've mentioned many of these. For instance, time and effort and money. Who's going to pay for preparation time? Who's going to pay for the partners to get together? Especially when you're talking about at the teacher level. Who's going to pay for the occupational instructor and the adult education instructor to get together and contextualize their lesson plans? And once more, what successes have programs already had? The successes are out there. You just have to look at them. And fortunately, there are many grants through our federal partners, both the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, that are trying to help people have enough money to look at the different challenges and determine paths to success. So if you keep an eye on the Federal Register, you can see what's coming up. And if you look at the outcomes of these projects, you can also see. John F. Kennedy once said that change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. I know it's very easy to get caught up in the future, in the present, and especially the past. But we really need to be thinking about, what do our programs need to do to prepare for the future? And one of those things I do want to mention is to think about the importance of outcome measures for adult education. Since the Adult Education Act in 1994, state-level adult education programs have been funded based on the number of high school dropouts in each state. And that hasn't changed since 1964. But what about the future? Many adult educators believe that with the strengthening of the performance outcome measures under WIOA, that eventually maybe even federal funding will be somewhat based on performance outcome measures. And although it's not required by WIOA, many states are already going into performance funding for their locals. So what is here now and what is coming down the pike? It's very interesting to me that integrated English literacy and civics education is required. You do have to have integrated education and training for this special grant. It is recommended for all other programs, but it is required for this particular one. And there's been an emphasis in this law to also be sure that you include professionals who have degrees and credentials in their native countries, and that you continue to help them in English language and getting the skills they need as parents, workers, and citizens, but also to prepare them for careers. Again, there are many challenges to this, and one obviously has to do with the fact that some students being served are not legal immigrants and may not be able to be served by some local programs.